Hey guys, Mrs. Perez here. Today we're looking at Chapter 6, Section 2, A Critical Time. Okay, so after the Declaration of Independence was signed, the war continued, right? And like we said, this changed the focus of the war. We're not fighting to be treated fairly now, we're fighting for our independence. So the British began focusing on the middle colonies instead of New England. New England had been like the hotbed of all that activity, but they think the middle colonies are going to play a bigger role in the war itself. And really at the beginning of the war, American and British victories and struggles went back and forth. There wasn't a clear front runner at the beginning. So let's start getting into some specific battles, and we're starting with the Battle of Long Island. During the Battle of Long Island, a British fleet led by Sir William Howe arrived on Staten Island. Washington was expecting this, right? He had brought his troops out to Brooklyn to fight, and, he's ready, waiting for the British. But the British really outnumber the Americans, and we can officially call them Americans now, right? We have declared our independence. We're no longer colonists. We are citizens of the United States of America. So the Americans are outnumbered during the Battle of Long Island, which takes place in August of 1776. Basically, the British drove Washington's troops out of Brooklyn, and Washington had no choice but to abandon New York City. He just didn't have the manpower he needed to defend it, and therefore the British had control of the city for most of the war. We've got a gentleman named Nathan Hale. He was a patriot from Connecticut, and at this time he spied on the British, trying to figure out what their plans were for the Battle of Long Island. He was ultimately caught and captured by the British. He was sent to trial and sentenced to death. His final words before being hanged were, "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." And those words really inspired a lot of patriots, this idea that, death is worth it 1,000 times if it's for your country. It's for patriotism and it serves a purpose. This really helped support the war effort for the Americans. Alright, so after winning in New York, which was obviously a key city, the British also wanted to capture Philadelphia. They figured the more important cities they could capture and knock down, the easier it will be to defeat the Americans as a whole. American morale is pretty low at this time, right? Many soldiers felt hopeless and deserted their posts, and desertion during a war, we might think of that disrespectfully, right? But if things are going bad, you're having a really tough time, and home is like 30 miles away, I think it would be a pretty tempting thing, at least in my perspective. So Thomas Paine, who had written Common Sense, as we had seen previously, right, traveled with the American army, and he wrote another pamphlet called The Crisis. And the purpose of this pamphlet was really to boost morale and inspire soldiers to keep fighting even through hard times. We need every man we can get. And again, Paine's words are really inspiring and really do help us in the war effort like they had done in the past. Alright, another battle, the Battle of Trenton. And I know this seems like a flash run through. It is. We'll look at this more closely soon. So the Battle of Trenton takes place on Christmas in 1776. Washington led 2,400 men across the Delaware River in small boats. The men were freezing and starving, but the trip was worthwhile. American troops surprised the British with an attack on December 26, 1776. They were not expecting this. They did not see us coming. It was a really strong victory for the Americans, and again, it helped boost morale and make us feel like, okay, we have a fighting chance in this war. Alright, so we get new plans developing. British General John Burgoyne wanted to isolate New England, right? We know there's a lot of patriots in New England. We've had trouble previously, right, because of this. So he wants to cut New England off from the other colonies. He also makes a plan to attack Albany, New York, from 3 directions with the help of 2 other generals and their troops. The other generals were delayed, and this created problems for Burgoyne, right? He can't carry out this plan on his own. But he continues to lead troops towards Albany, and on the way he actually recaptures Fort Ticonderoga, which we had seen in a previous section. So in Saratoga, New York, Burgoyne's men were met by American General Horatio Gates and his troops. Gates's troops surrounded the British, who were actually forced to surrender in October of 1777. Why does this matter? Well, this really ended the British threat to New England, and it also convinced the British that this was not going to be an easy war to fight. They thought they're this experienced nation, they have all these resources, they can kind of knock us down in a second. It's not going to be that easy, and we're proving that point battle after battle. So now, after the Battle of Saratoga, which was a surprising win for us, the French come out and openly support American independence. They say, yep, you should be your own independent nation, and we want to help you separate from Britain. So the U.S. forms an alliance with the French, and remember, an alliance is a formal agreement to work together toward a common goal. France really wants to see British power weakened, right? It's not necessarily that they're so happy and inspired to help us beautiful patriots, with our noble cause. They're not fans of the British. They're holding a grudge from the 7 Years' War, and they want to see Britain knocked down a few pegs. So France actually sends troops here to help the Americans and to fight alongside the Americans. Some European volunteers that played big roles. Marquis de Lafayette was a French noble who became a high-ranking officer in Washington's army. He became close friends with George Washington. We have a gentleman named Friedrich von Steuben. He was a German baron who helped train the Continental Army, which is another term for the American Army. He taught soldiers how to march, how to improve their aim, and how to attack with bayonets effectively. So we're seeing already that we're making friends with people from other nations, and they're really contributing to our war effort. This is already the last slide for today, looking at Valley Forge. So the Continental Army spent winter of 1777 in a camp at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Bottom line, conditions were not good. There wasn't enough clothing, food, or shelter for the soldiers, and this is where they're expected to stay for the winter. Many soldiers got sick and went hungry. When American civilians found out, they're not happy, right? We want our soldiers to be thriving, not struggling in poor conditions. So they sent whatever food, medicine, and ammo they could to Valley Forge. Despite these hardships, the soldiers continue training with Steuben, and they do become stronger. And we're going to see the payoff of that strength in future slides. But that is it for today, guys. Have a great night.